I'm absolutely thrilled to be here in Toronto. It's actually my first speaking engagement in Canada, which is weird. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years, 18 times, and you guys have finally broken down and invited me. So I have what I think is going to be an excellent 75-minute talk. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll learn. But I should tell you right up front, I'm into revisionist history. The death of the publishing industry is not true. It's not happening. I actually believe we're heading into the golden age, the next golden age of publishing. And if you look at my picture here, my revisionist is that Socrates is not drinking hemlock, he's drinking a Heineken. And that's how we need to approach this. So yeah, I personally started in newspapers, magazines. I work for every major corporation. And all this means is that I have a wide peripheral vision on where this industry is and where this industry is going. And I also am a founder of Media Ideas, which is an analytical research group. So not only can I speak viscerally about our industry, but I have actually some science to back up what's going on. So later today I'm going to discuss for us Steve Jobs and the impact of the tablet. But first I thought I would introduce here at Magnet the iBo. Right? This is the iBo 7.0. It took 40 years in research to develop the iBo, but you got to start somewhere. And the iBo 0.5, my mom gave me a printing set, and I think that's how I became a publisher. I was intrigued. My first newspaper in 1970, 50 people, long hair. We had a 50,000 weekly circulation out of nothing. One of my friends just said, let's start a newspaper, and I said, okay, what do you know about it? I moved on to start a newspaper in Arizona, and then I started High Times magazine in 1974, and we had an enormous circulation. Our first issue was 10,000 copies, sold out 100%. We reprinted 20,000 copies, sold out 100%. And it's a long story and a healthy story, but I was 24 years old, and that's how I can stand here today, because I learned a lot there. And then there's, of course, Cheech and Chong and Geraldo and Bo. And then I get to corporate America, right? McCall's, New York Times, there's no pictures. There's no proof I was ever there. So here's what I want you to take from that as entrepreneurs take pictures, and corporate shirts do not. So some things that I considered for Magnet, I wanted to understand the history of the magazine business. I tried to find out what was Canada's oldest general interest magazine, which some say is Saturday Night, but oddly enough, McMaster University says it was Toronto Saturday Night, started in 1896, but Wikipedia says it started in 1887. So I went and found this chart, of which Saturday Night is not even listed. It lists all kinds of magazines, so there's all this confusion. So what did I do? It made me research Canada, and here's what I found out. Your buildings are different. Your geese are different. The maps are different. The lakes are different. Hockey is different. And what I was really stunned to find out, that child rearing is different. Your ambassadors are different. Your superheroes are different. And your summer vacations are quite unique. I hear you have 2 seasons, July and winter. I don't know if that's true. And then to top it all off, your Santa is completely different. So what does that mean? Does it mean publishing here is different too? So here are some things that we ought to consider. We've been in this communication business a really long time. How did we get here, and where are we going? 32 years ago, we made cave paintings. Humans have always needed to communicate, to record our actions and views of the world. Clay tablets were used in Mesopotamia at Nivea, where they found 22,000 tablets dating from the 3rd century BC. Make that the 7th century. This was the library of the kings of Assyria, who had workshops and copyists and conservationists at their disposal. And if you think about it, this suggests that they had a system of organization with respect to books and a plan of conservation and classification, which is a pretty sophisticated system for 7th century society. In ancient Egypt, papyrus was used for writing, maybe as early as the first dynasty. Papyrus books were in the form of a scroll, several sheets pasted together for a total length of up to 10 meters or more. Then parchment progressively replaced papyrus. Its production began around the 3rd century BC, made using skins of animals. Parchment proved easier to conserve over time than papyrus. It was more solid than papyrus, and it allowed one to erase text. The Romans moved on and used wax-coated tablets, and they could easily write by using a stylus. And what they did was one end of the stylus was pointed, and the other was flat or spherical for erasing. Several of these tablets combined formed a codex, which we call a book. So moving right up to Gutenberg, the next thing that we did, the moving to printable, movable type, which was the first system for true information distribution to the general public. In my opinion, the development of printing using movable type was the 3rd most critical invention in the history of mankind, the first 2 being the axe and the plow. So an important concept to remember is that printing made it easy to transmit information without personal contact. And in this sense, it revolutionized the spread of knowledge. It actually democratized knowledge. So now you have my short history of communication. And what does that mean? We can't help ourselves. We're born communicators. And the most important thing from those few slides is that all technology is transitional. From the spear to the rifle, the horse and cart, to the SUV, the telegraph to the internet, all transitional technologies. And we must remember that paper is a technology too, a damn good one, effective for 1,000 years, but still just a technology. And technology has never really stood still. Technology is not a technology if it was invented before you were born. So you can no longer assuredly predict the future by basing it on the past. That equation is no longer relevant. I have absolutely no fear for our publishing future, and I believe it will be a very positive one, based on things that have not yet happened and things that have yet to be invented. So, some things to consider. In the past decade or so, our business is so fundamentally changed as to be almost unrecognizable to former participants and past industry giants. No one in our industry, no matter their title, performs the same function that their predecessors performed just 5 years ago. Life, publishing, and journalism are still undeniably changing. It seems to me that our new technologies and social structures demand change. We need to find ways to the next logical step in the obvious and the ongoing evolution of communication. So we're in a dual revolution that is part technologic and part social. So there has been a subtle social change that is often missed: knowledge. It is now far more important to know how to search for a fact than to actually know a fact. That changes everything. It changes our society. It changes the way children think. Not in a bad way, just in a different way. The technological change that is happening I call the disruptive factor. And if you think about it, when Gutenberg invented the press and movable type, entrepreneurs like us in this room, they took a look at it and they said, like, get it. Movable type, print, on paper, on parchment. I know how to make money. And we did know how to make money for 600 years. And the Wright brothers invented a plane. Entrepreneurs like us took a look at the plane. We threw in stewardesses and food, multiple destinations. We knew how to make money. The problem today is that the technology that we as publishers are using refuses to stand still. It morphs and changes every day. And so it's extremely hard to develop a business plan on a technology that refuses to stop changing. Hard but not impossible. Society and technology always marches on. We're in an exponential growth period that nobody understands because it's not understandable. Technology built on new technology, built on even newer technology, built on even newer technology. It cannot be comprehended nor forecast. Technology is just what it is. A fast-moving and ever-moving ecosystem, a new way of doing business. These developments are nothing new. Humans have been crossing new levels of complexity for 5,000 years. New levels of complexity always lead to the creation of further complexity. Rock to clay, papyrus to vellum, to paper. We excel at this kind of collective learning. It is this special ability of humans to save and share information on a generation by generation basis that leads to even further complexities. And it is worth noting that we're the only species with this gift. So it takes Darwin's understanding of adaptability to changes to survive and thrive and make an ongoing profit in the publishing marketplace today. Some more things to consider. There's a cute little drawing, and there's a little girl there. She's talking to her mom. She's like, "Mom, what's normal?" And the mom says, "Honey, it's just the setting on the dryer." So my question to you, it's a no-brainer of a question, but which of these is the primitive device? Anybody? Would you, sir, like to answer that question?
I'm going to guess the newspaper, but I may be wrong.
100% wrong. It took us 600 years to perfect this. It is perfected. 5 years from now, it'll work exactly the same way. It is damn good at what it does. This, on the other hand, is primitive. 5 years from now, we'll look at this and wonder how we possibly use this to communicate, to read. It will ever more change. And that's hard for us to grapple with. So speaking of normal.
Emma. 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 Emma.
Nouveau le trèfle maxi-feuille, vraiment plus large.
So yes, paper still has a great and wonderful future. And some paper will be used to print superior printed magazines too. So this paradox of the printed magazines in a digital world. What do the publishing pundits believe about print surviving?
The bloggers and the pundits, of course, don't see it that way. They continue to predict the death of the magazine and any other media to anyone who will listen.
But the rumors of our death are, as an old magazine guy once said, greatly exaggerated.
Merely myths.
Bring out your dead. Here's one. Ninepence.
I'm not dead.
What? Nothing. Here's your ninepence.
I'm not dead.
Here. He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is. I'm not.
He isn't?
Well, he will be soon. He's very ill. I'm getting better.
No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
Now they try to tell me that printing is dead. Computers. Computers are replacing printing. Yeah, right. Well, they've been telling me that for years. First it was the 8-track. Then it was the Betamax. Then it was the ColecoVision. And look who's still here. Nah, we conquered the computers.
We've asked those experts 3 questions. Question 1. In your opinion, what do you think is the future of the printed word in a digital age?
The future of the printed word is exactly as it is now. Nothing has changed. It's just as valuable, it's just as pertinent, just as meaningful, and actually, an important fact, is just as lucrative as it was. The problem is, as we move forward, there'll be less print than there was. What's left will be choice, will be quality, will be a luxury that people should be willing to pay for. And that's the thing. We have to change our paradigm and have people pay for print, which they're unaccustomed to paying for its real worth and its real value. We've been subsidized by advertising for way too long. As we move into the future, that relationship with advertising will change somewhat, but the value of print stays as strong as it ever was, and if we're smart, it'll get better than it ever was. We just need to pay for the right editors to move forward.
I think magazines are here for a very long time. Magazines in their current print incarnation. They're portable, they're inexpensive, you can't beat the sort of reprographic or textual experience. You can read it backwards to forward, you can plunge into the middle. I mean, talk about intuitive navigation. For all of those reasons, if you leave it on the bus, it's very different than leaving your laptop or your iPod on the bus. I mean, it's, you know, it's like, okay, well, next time, or I'll buy another one.
So, when it comes to the unnecessary dialogue about the death of print, I'm rather stunned by some of the players in the industry that continue to repeat it. Whatever are they thinking? This repeated rumor comes mostly from disenfranchised ink-on-paper publishers and reporters. And they mistake a change in dominance for death. And I can assure you that a loss of dominance is not equivalent to death. It just feels that way. The only thing that has changed is that there is more competition than ever before for both advertising dollars and readers. At the end of the day, if you supply what the advertiser and or the reader actually wants, you make money, you have a job, and you have a career. If you can't supply what the reader or the advertiser wants, you languish and say that print is dead or dying. That statement is just not true, it's wrong, and it's plain ridiculous. The substrate doesn't matter anymore, only the ability to deliver content. So this wonderful loss of innocence, it seems to me that the biggest problem we suffer from is the loss of innocence. Not too long ago, there were basically 3 ways to communicate: print, radio, and TV. Now there are dozens of ways and variations to reach out to our readers and our businesses. The publishing community must stop whining about the death of print, which isn't actually happening, and get back to producing products that are valuable and worth buying on any substrate. The only value of anything is what the customer is willing to pay for it. Magazines have been dying for generations, and then new ones are born. Entire categories have come, conquered, and then totally disappeared. It is a natural and normal phenomenon. Their disappearance is not a reflection on the entire industry, but rather on that particular category at that particular time for that particular title. There are too many examples to mention of the successful reinvention of the magazine model. This, of course, means that we have serious competition ahead of us for those who wish to remain in the print side of our business. We will actually have to earn our living and our longevity with creativity and excellence. And that's okay. The only thing that matters is the superiority and intelligence of our products and the perceived and branded value of our content. Print isn't dead or dying, it's evolving from a commodity to a luxury. And as a luxury, there will be much less of it. But what is left will be of extremely high quality in both physical product and editorial content. This year in San Francisco, Josh Tyringle, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, won the Editor of the Year award. In a conference before he got that award, he said several very interesting things. The reasons for publishing's terrible malaise were that no risks were taken. The digital era exposed the folly of past publishing practices. He went on to say that those titles didn't just die, they died because there were better things out there. We must change the value proposition. We want to actually earn the $5 a week. So a quick thought about technology. The basic modern assumption is always that things will be as they are. Only more so. That is, that we and the general public will still have the same needs, same wants, and the same desires as our forefathers, but continually satisfy those needs faster and more efficiently. Today, we are not talking about a process of continuous linear change, but about nonlinear, discontinuous change. And that is what makes the current market so unwieldy and so unreliable. So I put together an example of lost technologic dominance. In this case, it's the music industry. And if you can see here, it's green is LP records. There's some 8-tracks and cassettes in there in this 1980. And watch as history goes through. You can see that LP records are disappearing and cassettes are taking over. And sure enough, cassettes are leaving us and CDs are taking over. This is a very short period of time, less than 20 years. CDs dominate. And then MP3s come in. The loss of technologic dominance. So the music is the same, but the substrate has changed. 3 years ago, music downloads surpassed CD sales. The digitization of our lives is exploding beyond our ability to understand. Streaming everything from the cloud is becoming the preferred way to take in films, music, and TV shows. And I'm wondering, does this mean the death of the physical ownership for the possession of things? Think about that. For the concept of collecting physical things. Ebooks went from nothing to $1 billion market in a few short years. There is a consumer shift happening that is as yet underreported. It is the diminishment of owning some types of consumer products and replacing them with cerebral ownership. You can read it, watch it, listen to it, but you can't actually touch it. Our lives are more and more wrapped around our connected devices that store and give us access to things that we no longer collect in a physical form. We need to consider these tablets and smartphones not as devices, but rather as purchased services. It is increasingly not about the ownership of things, but more about owning the access to the intellectual property. And if that is true, it explains the generational difference of the traditional reader and the screenager. The difference between a digital native and a digital immigrant. The publishing industry used to be about seeing discrete, finite, finished magazines go out the door on a regular basis. The new apps-based publishing paradigm is very hard to understand if you have a possession-based temperament. Picking up a book or a magazine where you left it no longer involves picking up the same object, but rather the same text on whatever device happens to be at hand. The longevity of any business plan is now subject to radical changes from unseen events and unpredictable catalysts. These consist of social and technological advances that cannot be forecast to any great extent. But it's really important for us to understand that the publishing industry is just experiencing growing pains. It's not Armageddon. So if we can finally get over our old mind-numbing hubris that is based on past analog successes, we will be positioned to enjoy a large, robust, and extremely lucrative future. Our franchises have always been about good words and provocative thinking for a fee, not about a particular substrate. We're in a period of creative destruction. The new apps and the new substrates and the new ways of communicating to the public on a more personal level are tearing down the old and the successful business models. But the destruction of the old is being replaced by the new. We're talking here of hundreds of billions of dollars of redeployed revenues and redeployed profits. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, he said, "Never before in history have so many people from so many places had so much power at their fingertips." The reformatting of what was to what will be, going from print to digital, is a translation problem. The languages are different, the social customs are different, the actual way we communicate is different. So what we communicate is different. Everybody in this room has been sailing towards this digital country for quite some time, but in the last few years, we've really arrived. If you are a digital immigrant or a digital native, if you are a digital immigrant, I assure you that you speak with an accent, as any immigrant does. While the younger members of this gathering here today have no accent because they were born here. They are actually digital natives. and you need to process which of those are you. Life-altering technologies often start as minor curiosities and evolve into major necessities with little reflection on how they reform our perceptions or even how they came to be. Marshall McLuhan said, "We now live in an early part of an age for which the meaning of print culture is becoming as alien as the meaning of manuscript culture was to the 18th century. We are the primitives of this new culture." Humanity has entered a new period of transformation. While this is happening, we have to contend with our old legacy thinking, which is how we all tend to live in the present, look ahead to the future through the conceptual filters of the past. Technological growth that once took multiple generations to achieve now happens in months. Technology is evolving at such an accelerated rate that we really have no chance of keeping up with it. Not legally, not legislatively, not socially, not strategically, in fact, hardly at all. We can't keep up with it on any meaningful level. So what do you need to understand? Canada has changed. The world has changed. The world is now connected. The world is more sophisticated. The world shops differently. The consumer is now in control. And most importantly, perhaps, everybody is a broadcaster. So, some things to consider as we move on. I call this the cozy comfort factor. The next myth of comfort and delight here, the druids of fiber perfection will swear there cannot and will not ever be a comfortable way to lounge with an electronic reader. They say that if you're not reading on paper, there is no way to reach the true nirvana of the pleasurable reading experience. And so I put this together. BD is clearly before digital. AD is after digital. And what I want you to notice, there's no neck adjustment, right? Plenty of back support, perfect knee angle, and the only requirement here is damn good content. So let's see that one more time. BD, AD. This year, in 2013, 200 million tablets will be sold. And that's an amazing feat for a new technology that is, in fact, just a few years old. Thinking that there will never be a digital comfort factor is counterproductive to smart businesses everywhere. Digital reading will become comfortable. It will become the preferred way to read. You know, and again, I emphasize print is not dead. It's just not going to be the predominant way that people read. Data from Adobe shows that the number of people reading on tablet computers is up nearly 200% during the last 7 months. And digital magazine growth has increased from 300,000 issues per week to 2 million downloads per week. Consumers are buying digital magazines at an ever-increasing pace. Eric Schmidt again, he says the internet is the first thing that humanity has built that humanity doesn't understand. It's the largest experiment in anarchy that we've ever had. So, some other things to consider. This disruption. Most of our industry is in the throes of an ongoing disruption, the likes of which no one has ever seen before. Observing how some companies react and adapt, while others remain immobile and decline. Watching that is an invaluable exercise. The future of publishing is riddled with both opportunities and pitfalls, as the new age of digital disruption marches on, seemingly unstoppable. In the digital era, new tools, platforms, and software dramatically shorten the distance between an idea and its execution to the market. Disruption is all about the way it used to get done and the new way that it can get done today and tomorrow. Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, e-magazines, e-newspapers all disrupted what was for what is, which again can be disrupted in an instant. Digital disruption thrives on the rapid creation between ideas and digital disruptors and the need of a digital consumer. The term business development in our companies has always been an odd area. painted with broad strokes that covers many parts of the publishing business. It is, of course, in its simplest basis, about developing new revenue streams where none existed before. Today, for survival, publishers are being forced to make strange and sometimes radical adjustments to their business models and do so without much of a foundation to go on. We're now bridging the old, successful revenue models with the new, not quite understood, and different digital systems of revenue. The impact of these changes sometimes requires and involves companies to make radical restructures, and those restructures are, by their very nature of newness, extremely complicated. While traditional publishers adjust to the digital age, our adversaries, the startups, are at a huge advantage. The startups operate and speak a new language that no one truly understands, perhaps not even themselves. So I offer you the following video as proof of the ease, or perhaps the difficulty, of the new language of wannabe digital success.
Hello, Steve. Thanks for coming. My name is John. Any questions before we start? Good. How does your company currently measure results in digital marketing?
Well, we look at the bigger picture and try to see what kind of ripple effect we go for the key influencers who are, at the end of the day, we want to create a halo effect around our brand recognition.
We try to fine-tune engagements to get...
Working on getting a real 360-degree view of the customer to...
Cross-segment synergies. Likes?
Closed-loop marketing.
Sir?
Classification of our brand.
SEO?
Click-through rates?
Just make it go viral.
So digital buzzwords, what do they mean? Here's what we do know. And this is clear to understand. The business world has been divided into two camps. Attackers who are disrupting the status quo, trying to change the world, and defenders who try to minimize the downside. Is there a point to defending our old turf? Can it even be done? We also know that in the 21st century, power is easier to get than ever before. But just as important is that it's easy to lose. Communication is power. This available power is everywhere. The general public has almost as much reach now as any publisher, past or present. So I was wondering, why are we all gathered here at Magnet? Well, some of us are here to give lectures. Some of us came to make new friends and hear some new ideas. Some of us are applying old skills in new ways. Some of us are adapting to new jobs. And some of us are here because our old job got blown up. So what do we need to understand? Malcolm Netburn is the CEO of CDS Global, and he says, it's hard to have a digital strategy without a steady understanding of what and how digital content is being consumed. He said, until you understand what the marketplace is doing, it's very hard to have a digital strategy to map against it. So we have Woodman here, representing how well is the paper substrate industry doing? Well, it's important to note that print is still a very big industry at $640 billion. There are 45 trillion pages printed annually. But what does that mean to us in the publishing industry? How well is old media doing? This is a chart from this year, and yes, you can't read it. But I'll point out to you that People magazine in revenue has $1.4 billion in revenue. Better Homes is about $800,000 in revenue. And all these magazines we're talking here are enormous revenue producers. Unfortunately, as this chart will show, single copy sales are down 11% for every magazine. This is from Magnet, the other Magnet. 11% lost sales last year in newsstand sales. But I offer you for your consideration the publishing opportunity zone. Over the next 7 years, one of the main effects of the great publishing realignment will be the deep-rooted change experienced by the magazine industry, from primarily a print-oriented business to one where digital products will represent the largest share of a smaller periodic industry. I call this the opportunity zone. This dark purple blue, that's print revenue. The turquoise color, that's new money. That's anybody's money. It should be yours, but the truth is it's anybody's money. By 2020, and this is a chart from Media Ideas, that analytical research company that I founded, and I think this is conservative. They suggest that by 2020, 58% of the aggregate of all publishers, 58% of their revenue will be digital and 38% will be print. So backing up what I said before, print's not going to go away. Print will be about a $15 to $18 billion business, but digital will be the predominant way that people read and the predominant way that we as publishers will make money. Here in a nutshell view is the problem with the pro-print pundits and zealots. No one disputes that print will survive as a medium, not me or anybody else. But what they all miss are the frequency, size, page counts, and how those have all collapsed. And this chart shows standard rate and data titles and another organization, the amount of titles that there are. The blue line, and I don't have the Canadian statistics, but the blue line here is the US population, and the yellow line is subs and print. And you notice the track is not even keeping up with the US population. So we have a problem. There is a plateau, a successful plateau, but we're not there yet. John Wilkes is a vice president of digital editions for Hearst magazines. He spoke at a meeting in the Hearst Tower last week, and he said he described Hearst's digital strategy that helped its tablet subscriber base, Hearst, pass, I don't know if David Carey mentioned this, he probably did yesterday, they passed 1 million digital subscribers. And John Wilkes said the economics of a digital magazine are superior to the economics of a print magazine. He said it's a new revenue stream, it's a premium revenue stream, and we do far less discounting in digital magazine space. And the production costs are less. They're getting, I think on average, $19.95 for a subscriber in that 1 million. The average price is $19.95. That changes the whole paradigm of how we do that kind of business. This is a chart as an example of Hearst's paid content business, and you can see the steady growth, and that obviously is going to continue. This is representing of many, many other magazines. Bonnier is up here, Condé, Hearst, American Media, Rodale. All digital subscriber bases are growing at a rapid pace. This is the change from 2011 to 2012. So what David Carey said previously, I don't know what he said yesterday, because my flight was late. I would have been here. But what are you going to do? What these devices have done is finally allow us to monetize our content digitally. The engagement factors are fantastic. John Laughlin, the Hearst executive vice president, said, I hope that this is the demise of the $6, $7, $8, and $9 print subscriptions. John said that the days of consumer magazines relying on advertising pages as 70 to 80% of their revenue is over. Magazines must deepen relationships with consumers and get them to spend more dollars across both print and digital. So what else do we need to understand? And this is a biggie. I'm hoping most of you know of Mary Meeker. And this is a chart she actually produced a couple of years ago and then released it just a few months ago. This is time spent in media and advertising dollars spent. And if you'll notice, we're here on the left. We get 25% of the ad spend and 7% of the time spent. So there's a pretty big gap there. You can read that in many ways. Advertisers love us. They believe that magazines have a strong engagement factor. You can use any buzzwords you want, but this is a strong gap. Now, on the mobile side, there's $20 billion of new money. That's the same chart I showed you before. The engagement time in mobile is huge, but the ad spend isn't. Some will tell you the ad spend doesn't work yet. I promise you that problem will be solved. This is the same chart, but it's China. Now look what's going on over there. 11% ad spend on print magazines and 6% time spent. But look at their digital world. They've succeeded in making revenue in the digital world, in the mobile world, where the ad spend is higher than the time spent. This is a critical chart for us to understand. And this is also important. WPP CEO Martin Sorrell told a conference at the Paley Center that his clients are wasting 15 to 25% of their advertising budgets. Humorously, he said he just doesn't know which 15 to 25%. He's, of course, invoking the 20th century department store owner, John Wanamaker, whose well-known lament was, "Half the money I spent on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half." Mr. Sorrell went on, and he said advertisers should think seriously about slashing the amount they spend on newspapers and magazines, and accused Google, Facebook, and Twitter of being media owners masquerading as tech companies. The two big anomalies are newspapers and magazines. This is what he's saying. We're still investing 20% of our client ad budgets, but consumers are only spending 7 to 10% of their time there. He said something has to change. So I take you back to this chart. This is what he's talking about. Digital ad revenue are growing quickly, and a new report from the Interactive Advertising Bureau shows in the first quarter of 2013, digital advertising revenues hit $9.6 billion, a 15.6% increase in 1 year. I'm back to the digital opportunity zone for us. We're going to get there. We have to. Google's advertising revenue is bigger than that of the entire print industry. Here's Google's revenue and print industry, and they have surpassed us. This is a fascinating chart by my friend Dr. Joe Webb. You can see the growth, or perhaps the diminishment, of magazines, as I've been saying all morning. But look at the advertising agencies. They're not with us. They have moved on. Their revenue is up. Back to Malcolm, he says the major opportunity in the magazine industry is to be ahead of the curve in the ways in which magazines are going to monetize and build a consumer universe and sell more and interesting things to that audience. You know, the PC was never a threat to the publishing business. This is a PC mobile. And tablets and mobile platforms are a threat. If we don't accept the new business realities, we're in trouble. This is a fundamental change from the way things were in a PC-dominated world of content consumption and content creation. So what do we publishers need to think about? I attend many conferences, attended the Magazine Publishers Association Swipe conference. It was their digital conference. And for years in my newsletter, I've been commenting on the difference between corporate shirts and the aspect of the entrepreneur. I mean, no disrespect to my corporate friends, of which I have hundreds, maybe even thousands. I was once an entrepreneur in a corporate shirt myself, working for a corporation in an office doing high-level corporate things. It is or was a very safe conclave to be in. But the repeated phrase heard over and over again at the MPA Swipe conference was decidedly different and decidedly not corporate. Scott Havens of The Atlantic stated that we need to strive for independence and take the opportunity to disrupt. He said that we need a new model for corporate incubation, shorten the process. He suggested that we need to throw out the org chart and emulate the disruptors. Jennifer LaRue of Martha Stewart, which had a 30% growth rate year over year, paralleled Scott. And she said that in today's environment, you must have a startup mentality. Don Peschke, the founder of August Home, said, like Cortez, we need to burn the boats. And he's doing it. He's slashing and burning his print products and creating digital-only world, and he's succeeding. In my opinion, we're in for a long period of reinvention, and almost no one now in journalism will see the end of it. There's no point in being nostalgic about it. How we used to do things in the 70s, 80s, 90s, who cares? We have to go with the flow. We're at the beginning of a new chapter, a new part of history of media, and not at the end of the last chapter of the book. What we have gone through in the last 2 decades is just the beginning. Actually, just the very beginning of the beginning. So, what hasn't changed is the need to read. Instant globalization of news leads to a situation where top news is spread fast by its own force. Stories are becoming popular by the public's viral ability to make it popular. Popularity breeds popularity. This is not new to publishing, but the speed at which it's happening is new. Digital publishing will continue to become a stronger and more reliable platform that is easier and easier to use. In 1999, 38 million people had broadband internet. Today, 1.2 billion have it on their mobile phones. And that's going to jump dramatically. There are 6 billion clamshell mobile phones that are connected to the internet. So the gap of 6 billion to 1.2 billion smartphones is going to change rapidly. So advertisers are like puppies. They have to be trained to go on the paper when they're young, or they can and will be trained to go someplace else. So competition redefined.
Mr. Loveland, who controls the e-publishing market?
Today, I don't think anyone controls the market. I think it's a jump ball, and it's a great opportunity for publishers to stake their claim.
Competition redefined. While our competitors used to be easy to identify, today almost any company, group, or person can become your future competitor. They can be anywhere on the planet. Low threshold of entry means new competitors will be in abundance. They will come from well below the radar screen. They will be online, global, fast-moving, and smart. Another set of competition for us. Marketers are actively trying to figure out how to do our job. Publish valuable, relevant, and compelling content to build subscriber bases and ultimately sell more of their products and services. Since consumers are completely in control of the information gathering process, brands need content consistently, matched to their buyers' personas, and they need it at multiple points in the buying process. Marketers are now bypassing publishers and going directly to the consumer with content marketing programs. So what we need to consider now is that we no longer need to wait to catch the news, but instead we have minute-by-minute updates delivered to us almost as it happens. Jeff Jarvis said, if the news is that important, it will find me. The new technologies of the information distribution offer endless options for us to reach a world full of customers. The shipping costs to reach this global market is exactly the same as it is to reach the girl next door. What we need to consider is the power of citizen journalism. Many publishers are adapting and using their readers to create content, citizen journalism. People want to be involved and take part in the news reporting. People want the ability to voice their opinions and observations. And I suggest to you, I'm just one guy. I haven't worked for corporate America since 1996, but I have a global presence. This is my tweet map, and as you can see, I'm everywhere in the world. This is a threat and a wonder. You too need to have a global presence. You too need to be everywhere. English is the language franca, if you'll pardon the expression, of the world. Everybody on the internet speaks English. You can make money anywhere. This new ability of global reach empowers a style of publishing that I call universal niche. An idea, concept, or hobby enjoyed by a few, but on a global basis. Basically, the scale of the available readership redefines small as big. Doesn't matter what your niche is, the world is at your fingertips. And as we know, communication has changed. For our revolution, you no longer need an AK-47 or a machete. Twitter and Facebook will do nicely, thank you. Many people and many companies have seen the trends I've shown you today, but they also may lack the courage or the expertise to utilize them for their future business. This is often due to a concern about the impact of their current mode of business. What you have to remember, and the key message that applies to all businesses everywhere, is this: it is your future business that should replace your current business before someone else replaces it for you. Computers have an additional dimension that is both wonderful and threatening to publishers and at the same time. And I'm speaking of the ability of some programs to create computer-generated editorial serendipity and on the fly. There are now several programs that do this, and they're in their early adolescence. Flipboard, Paper.li, and many others have given us the ability to create a personalized publication that is paginated, designed, and a rich reading experience populated by sources that we, the reader, choose. But the question is, who profits from this information overload? My friend Drew Davis says we are in a period of information overload. Just because more information is available doesn't mean we have the time or skill to consume more information. But all this access to more reading platforms and new magazines begs the question about revenue streams and who gets a piece of the action. What we need to consider are all the new paths for publishers have to do information distribution. And information distribution was formerly called publishing.
Starting today, you can create your own handsome, beautifully laid out digital magazine on almost any subject you want, even if you know nothing about designing a digital magazine. Hi, this is Walt Mossberg from the Wall Street Journal, and what I'm talking about is a new feature of a familiar tablet and smartphone app called Flipboard. Now, Flipboard has been an app which has allowed you to take social media content and feeds from blogs and news sites and organize them into really nicely laid out pages. Starting now, they're coming out with their 2.0 version, and the key feature there is that in addition to doing all that, they're going to let people publish their own digital magazines with just a few clicks and then automatically lay it out so it looks beautiful.
I've been experimenting and using both Flipboard and Paper.li since they were created. Most people in publishing are aware of my newsletter with a robust circulation of 16,000 publishers around the world, but few are aware of my daily e-newspaper that has been published since 2010. And just a few weeks ago, I started a Flipboard magazine to experiment. I have 1,000 subscribers for both of these. I've done nothing to publicize it. 1,000's not a particularly large number, but it's indicative of what is possible. And both of these magazines are automated. I don't do anything to create my Paper.li. It follows the feeds that I have on Twitter and creates a really robust newspaper. And this is just in its infancy. Mike McHugh, Flipboard CEO, reportedly noted that a primary focus of Flipboard is to help publishers, this is good, make money from their original content through advertising. And I thank you, Mike. We appreciate that, because he was also kind enough to note that Flipboard will take a cut of those advertising dollars that he's collecting. Mr. McHugh went on to suggest that he wants publications to be able to charge users to access particular articles.
I wouldn't start with trying to sell individual articles, individual pieces of content, because that's not where our value has ever been derived. Just simply putting your content up on the website for free doesn't undermine the value of the packaging you do in print, right? And our research absolutely shows that. There is no cannibalization of offering free individual pieces of content online, or even an entirely free website, if it doesn't offer a substitute for what you deliver in print. As soon as it starts becoming a substitute for what you deliver in print, i.e. it has that convenience, that portability, that utility, that ability to navigate the package in the way that people navigate the package in print, then I would suggest you start charging for it, because then it becomes a substitute. But in the meantime, if it's not a substitute, then it doesn't undermine the value. There's no cannibalization. It doesn't undermine the value of what you deliver in print.
So he says. He's from The Economist, and he's right for The Economist. But he may not be right for you. And that's part of the problem we're all facing. Our particular niches, our particular audiences all react to things differently. So the audience of The Economist, his theory of not selling articles works. But for you it might. And there's no magic wand to say which decision is right or wrong. You have to do your own research with your own readers to figure that out. So is Flipboard undermining the value of the magazine package? I think it comes down to the concept that size doesn't matter in publishing, but our own uniqueness does. In the 21st century, we each play by our own individual rules determined by our niche or our sector, which has different sensibilities depending upon the uniqueness of your own readers. For some kinds of readers, you can charge for an article basis, and to some, the public, you can't. At The Economist, they feel that they can't or won't at this time. So, I think I'm right on schedule. In closing, a few of my observations. We're at a watershed moment. It's clear to me that we've reached this watershed moment in the life cycle of publishing and how we transmit content to consumers for profit. The profit will also, by default, include necessarily sharing it and dealing with companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, and perhaps even Microsoft. Anybody who's been on the newsstand is already sharing a piece of their profit with a distributor. This is no different. So it's really not that new. Apple, with its large market share of the tablet business, makes it a semi-silent business partner with publishers, and that's for the foreseeable future. I say semi-silent because Apple has created a set of moral standards about which it will or will not allow items into the iTunes store. That is a business-mandated restriction of freedom of speech, which our forefathers tried to address. Virtually no one in the news business was prescient enough to imagine how radical the impact of the internet would be. In the modern history of media, the reigning giants have nearly always been caught napping by transformative change. This may be precisely the moment to say that a lot of mourning is besides the point. The decline and fall of old media, which was inevitable and unavoidable. Old media was not always what they were cracked up to be, and at the end of civilization as we know it is not in the cards. If you want to survive, change is inevitable and required to keep pace with the changing conditions. Organizations must constantly review, evaluate, and adjust their businesses and adjust operations to new conditions in order to grow and be successful. They need to be prepared to learn new skills, take advantage of new trends, and adapt to unforeseen circumstances. You've got to compete with your rivals in totality, across all markets, across all users, and not just on technical specs. All the money in the world can't save you if you can't execute. There will be hundreds of billions of dollars to be made in the reading industry. Some of that will be digital revenue and some of that will be paper revenue. But as I've told you today, the trend is obviously favoring digital platforms. Positioning is everything. The strategic positioning of yourselves and your companies as innovators is the most positive thing you can do in this environment. If you are part of an innovative future and your company is a great innovator, you will more than just survive, you will prosper and thrive.
So if people ask me, what would you tell a recent college graduate of why to go into the magazine business? I can't imagine a better business to go into, and for all sorts of reasons. The first is the potential of these brands, not only in terms of to always to make them better in their print format, but also in all of the other things that surround them in terms of social media, free web, tablets. But the one thing that I love about the magazine business is A, it's a meritocracy, and B, the power of ideas rule. And so the nature of our business with the amount of change, we don't care if a good idea comes from someone who's 55, 45, 25, or maybe 15 year work here, but and what's important about that is, if you work for a bank, you gotta, work for 20 years before you get a seat at the table and get to be the assistant vice president. In the magazine business, the best and brightest get a chance to rise to the top. And so if you are, if you love media, if you're a very creative person, if you like to work hard, because the days are both long but they're fulfilling, the magazine business is a great place to start your career.
I'll tell you that I think we're heading into the next golden age of publishing. I think it's neither half full or half empty. It's spilling over in joy. It depends on how you define publishing. I define publishing as information distribution. It's the distribution of words and thought. I am indifferent as to what substrate those words are on. So if you're including publishing as any way to distribute a good idea that's worth paying for, we're in better shape than we've ever been in before.
If survival is your goal, as either a company, and maybe even more importantly, as an individual professional, it is best to remember something that W. Edwards Deming once said, and I paraphrase, "It is not necessary to change, for survival is not mandatory." So in the end here, this is a great time to rethink the unthinkable. This is a unique and historic period where the unthinkable has never been more possible. We live in a period of experimentation, innovation, and entrepreneurism that the world has never seen before. Chris Keyes, a few years ago, he said, if you're in the business right now and not excited about all the changes, then perhaps you should get out of the business. So I asked you early on, as a media person, how do you define normal, and what's normal in publishing's future?
Welcome to the future. Or should I say, your future. In the future, the country will be a great place to work. Your high-tech home office will be a media-rich environment, outfitted with global networking and the latest digital tools to turn your dreams into reality. Need to be somewhere? No problem. Just pack up and go. You'll be able to keep working because your car drives itself. Your team is always available for brainstorming, even while you commute, thanks to a personal digital assistant that carries all your files. Who knew that board meetings could be such a blast? Great job, but you work to live, so technology will help you live better, like wireless technology that brings you news while you're at the beach. This just in, looks like it's going to be a great big beautiful tomorrow. The end. Or should I say the beginning of your future.
This is the beginning of your future. In the past, we thought the future was going to be in the future. Recently, it has become clear that the future is now. And if that's true, what can we expect from the real future that's not here yet? David Granger, editor of Esquire, he said, let's rethink everything that we assume. And then finally, really closing, I'm going to give you that great publishing visionary, Wayne Gretzky. You know who was correct when he said, I skate to where the puck will be and not where it's been? And on that, I say thank you.